Hi friends, welcome to the Teachers Lounge podcast, Teach, Lead, Inspire. Ben Heckathorn here, your host and source of all things chattable in the education space. Here we are again on the lounge, the staff room one, chatting. It's recently been the September school holidays, or perhaps you call it term break, or stand down time, or flexible working. Perhaps you just don't even care what you call it. It's just like, whatever, there's no kids, all good. Well, that's it. Today we're talking semantics. Yeah, well, at least figuring out the words we use for this break period and why. And if those words affect how we enter the holidays and transition back into the work term. So that's it. Today's topic is school holidays. Or term break. Look, I don't really care, but I just want you to catch an understanding of the words you use, that they are powerful to the way that you think. So let's kick this can around a bit. And of course, if you're not in the Teachers Lounge Teach, Lead, Inspire Facebook group, simply quoting a famous Australian advertisement, where the bloody hell are you? So sit back, grab a cuppa, or enjoy the commute with Ben, and let's chat semantics around calling it school holidays. All right, school holidays or term break and all the other words in between. So this, in a couple of the Facebook groups I have been lurking around in, has exploded. Some people are passionate about it being school holidays. You know, they completely disconnect. Others are like, oh, I've got to get all my work done. And then other people are like, you shouldn't need to work in the term break. It's your time. So it's a really confusing space. And I think the terminology we use around it is also important, particularly for our non-teacher friends who I think just simply just call it school holidays because they've got kids around, they don't know what to do. So how do we as teachers use this language? So in the early years of my teaching career, I just called the end of the term school holidays. I think everyone did. It's what it was. It's what we did. And perhaps then, though, it was simpler times, as a couple of people in the Facebook group pointed out that the workload has been increasing and expectations have been more demanding. So it's not really the case for what it is now. So I quizzed a whole bunch of people in, as I said, a few different social groups, teetering again on the edge of being kicked out, which is why I actually set up my own, the Teachers Lounge, Teach, Lead, Inspire, because I can't actually kick myself out. But I think unanimously the term school holidays implies a time of rest and relaxation where term break or stand down can feel a bit more like a brief pause before gearing up for work again, almost missing out on that rest and holiday bit. So this subtle difference in semantics, or the way you talk about something, can influence whether teachers, or you, truly switch off or feel pressure to work during the quote-unquote break. Now, I've got a whole bunch of live anecdotes from the Facebook group, which I'll briefly go through to form the foundation of our chat. Now, there's also some shout-outs here, and really appreciate those that did chime in, whether it's just to appease me or to get me to laugh at it. Some people were quite authentic and genuine in their responses, which is also really cool. So there's three questions that I posed. One, what do you call the break? Two, what do you typically do in it? Or what do you think it should be for? And three, do you crawl to the finish line, end of term, half dead, or have you got it all balanced and figured out? So a few little shout outs. We had Laura chime in and she said, I call it school holidays. I use them to rest my brain, rejuvenate. I do crawl to the finish line, which is a shame. But a lot of people do. Teaching is so mentally taxing. We could not do the job if we didn't get the breaks to rejuvenate. And I think I responded, I said, do you completely switch off? And she said, mostly yes. It's taken years to get to that point where I don't think about work at all during the break. And my point was it's a learned skill and ability to switch off and on. Katie chimed in, said, I call it school holidays. I use them for admin, planning, preparation. There's an oxymoron there. Holidays, but I'm also working. She did say, I'm exhausted by the holidays, but usually because of the emotional and physical drain of teaching, dealing with students and parents, rather than the workload itself. I balance my work throughout the term so I can get some rest during holidays. That's really cool. I asked a question, should teachers be so exhausted by the end of the term? And it was a yes or no answer, but I think her experience kind of chimes into her being able to rest and reset. There was Sarah, another one. I call it school holidays, but I know they are technically referred to as non-term weeks. There's some technicalities there. I use the break for resting, spending time with my kids, and slightly getting ahead of the term. I both crash at the end of the term, but also work hard to balance. Sarah calls it non-term time. Anne, call it end of term break. That's an interesting one. It's not holidays for teachers, it's recovery time and preparation time for the coming term. Agree. And then she said it's actually flexi time. We're getting into some fancy lingo here, but so time accrued during the term, so all those extra hours worked each week before and after school kind of gets paid back to you in this flexi time break, which is ironic because sometimes we feel the guilt or need to work even though we have worked and earned it. It's a tricky one. Laura, honestly, I'm finishing the term half dead and use the school holidays for self-care to put myself back together. At the end of this episode, I have a friend, I'll say the name and the podcast, who specializes in well-being, and this from Laura not to happen. Amanda, I call it flexible working time. Belle says I call it school holidays. I use it to rejuvenate, plan, mark, and again, basically a slow crawl, half dead to the end of the term. Rachel says non-term time. I use the break for balance of recovery and well-being. And there's quite a few others. Jana, half, so half holidays and half term break. That's an interesting one. And Sarah from South Australia, currently on holidays, but supporting a bunch of Year 12s in their final weeks, trying for the 1-to-1 ratio. Well, thank you all for chiming in there. And I'd like to expand on the term school holidays and term break. So let's jump into this. Now, the terminology teachers use for their breaks, I believe, carries subtle yet powerful implications for how they approach this, again, quote, time off. When educators refer to their time off as school holidays, it often portrays images of relaxation, travel, switching off, the cocktails by the beach, and the beautiful male or female feeding you grapes on what do you call those things? A hammock, or sitting on a rubber unicorn on a middle of an infinity pool. That's holidays. And that's switching off from work completely. So this phrasing aligns with what most people traditionally associate with holidays, a chance to step away from the daily responsibilities and focus on rest and personal enjoyment. Basically banishing your laptop, tasks, emails for a duration of time. The very word holiday suggests a clear boundary between work and leisure, which can mentally signal a complete break from teaching-related tasks. And that's the foundation of semantics for school holidays. On the other hand, calling it a term break or stand down or any of those other phrases shifts the tone entirely. These terms suggest a pause rather than a ceasing, a temporary halt before the cycle restarts. Break implies a shorter, less definitive period of time compared to holiday, often evoking the idea of simply catching one's breath before resuming work. Now, this phrasing can subtly encourage teachers to view the time as less restful or more transitional. But using phrases like term break, educators might feel that they are expected to use some of the time to catch up on tasks rather than fully 100% disconnect like a holiday. Again, this is the founding position with the semantics of term break. Now, you're probably thinking, well, just do half-half. But it's not that clear cut or straightforward, particularly if you've got kids. perhaps that's another podcast episode called Kids and Term Break, Managing the Juggle Without Neglecting Your Own Children from Your Self-Inflicted Work Guilt. Something like, I'll shorten it. The question pops up. How do these semantical terms impact your mindset? Now, in reference to and honor of some of the real dialogue from the Facebook group, again, join up, teach, lead, inspire. We have, firstly, this idea of rest or productivity. It's kind of the simple dichotomy of the two. So, if a teacher thinks of the break as a holiday, they are more likely to prioritize rest and thus disconnect from work. However, using term break suggests that you should still be being productive or doing something during this time. Using the correct terminology, the mindset can shift or transition from a period of crash and burn, end of term, which is not ideal, to restoration, to preparation, and then back into term, or incorrectly labeling the break could likely lead teachers to feel pressured to do more during their supposed, quote unquote, time off. Now, the next thought leads to, and this is probably the most important one today, guilt and expectations. Now, a key aspect of this mindset we're talking about is potential guilt. Now, I use the word potential purposefully as everyone is different. Everyone's striving for different things. Everyone has different circumstances. Maybe you're leaning into leadership strong and think that, I have to punch out 80-hour weeks so I can be recognized or do the job properly. And term break might be that for you. Look, you do you. But teachers who refer to the break as school holidays may, and I'm using that word specifically, feel guilty if they don't carve out and take enough time to intentionally rest and choose to, or maybe guilted to work. So conversely, opposite, those who use term break might feel guilty for not working enough. Maybe you've gone to the Gold Coast for a little bit too long and then the plane was delayed and then you're out 3 extra days. As the terminology suggests, that some work is expected. And then now guilt's there, and stress and anxiety. This guilt can create a real internal tug of war between self-care and the feeling of the obligation to prepare for the next term. Another point that has popped up is switching off. Now, referring to the time off as a holiday makes it easier to switch off mentally from, your teaching responsibilities, as it provides a clear mental boundary. Holiday, switch off, mojitos, clear boundary. Now, in contrast, using the words term break can start to blur those lines, making it harder to kind of mentally fully disconnect. Now, you may find yourself thinking about work even when you intend to rest. Now, as the term implies that the break is part of the ongoing rhythm of the school year rather than a distinct separation. So January, we've got a term break. Term 2, we've got your mid-year term break. Term 3, September break. Term 4, Christmas holidays. And you can catch those words about switching off there as well. Right, here's a new little segment for a quick sponsor grab. I'm actively looking for a show partner to come on board the wild ride of the Teachers Lounge, maybe A-Mart. That would be funny. But meanwhile, please punch a 5-star on Spotify and jump into the Facebook group Teachers Lounge, Teach, Lead, Inspire. And, like all the posts, throw some comments, questions in, that'd be great. But this is a space for a sponsor to jump in and really support and sponsor and drive the show forward. All right, welcome back, and more about semantics. Now, the terms like flexible working or student-free week or whatever buzzword you want to use for the term break suggest a level of autonomy over your time and workload. It means you get to decide. And this may alleviate guilt about resting. So hear me out. There is a concept called perception of flexibility in this. So Again, semantics, but this might also create pressure on yourself, be just in the mind, to be productive, as what we call this flexibility implies freedom to work as well as rest, kind of this hybrid approach. Now, how teachers label the break impacts how they prioritize their activities over the 2 weeks also. So using school holidays may focus on rest and family time, while using non-term time or end-of-term break signals a balance between personal recovery and preparation for the next term. There's a semantical, that's actually a fantastic word, there's a semantical balance between personal recovery and professional preparation. And so we know this as the perception of flexibility. Your autonomy, you choose what you do over the school break. Now, I hope you can catch so far the fine balance of managing your personal life with your professional obligations in this free time period between terms. Is it solely your time? Is it literally stand down time to catch up on work, prepare without pressure of the kids? Or is it a hybrid space to autonomously figure out the balance you need? Now, argue what you will, but that's the answer, the third one. Figure out your balance. Take the care you need. Also, though, punch out what you need to. And remember, time is a gift. You got 2 weeks, maybe 3, 1 if you're in the territory over April. How are you going to use it? So, next, I really want to point out 3 practical tips on balancing self-care and this freedom to work, which is on your own terms. Now, there is a caveat. If you have your own children, there may be many more complications. For example, our family just got back from the Gold Coast. That was the example I used before. It was self-care, family time, we complete disconnect. Now that we're back, today my wife is at school, preparing, stressing, catching up. Me, I've found myself doing this in the home office, but I've also got on other work that I'm committed to, and I'm doing that. I've got blocks of that. But what are our kids doing? They were just watching movies. It's 38 freaking degrees outside in Darwin. There's not a whole lot else to do. I think our daughter's on our bed watching a movie, and our son's playing Mario Kart or something. But, we are still figuring it out as well. Each break is different, but each break needs a plan. And boom, segue. That is number 1 point. And now we are looking at the balancing this self-care with your freedom and choices to work on your own terms in this break. And the first point I want to make in this space is to create a structured plan. So you can successfully alternate between rest and work during the break. Planning out 1 week for relaxation and 1 for preparation. I think it was Sarah, Jenna, maybe a couple of others do this, and to ensure the balance and reduce anxiety when the term resumes again. That's the plan. And that's a great place to start. 1 week off, 1 week on. But which one do you take off? Probably the first week, I'd say. Kind of hit that break and kind of roll back into the term on your terms. I think I've used the word term too much. If you're playing a podcast bingo, term would definitely be struck out. So hitting the term break with a structured plan can help you strike the perfect balance between rest and this preparation for the next term. Just ensuring that you return to school feeling refreshed, but also organized. Now that's the plan. Now, many teachers, and perhaps you do, divide your breaks into segments of rest and work, which allows you to recover while also reducing anxiety about returning to work unprepared. So structuring your break into defined periods really helps you manage time. It also helps avoid burnout if we're thinking the longer sustainability of every break. And it also helps you feel more in control. But there is an intentionality to create the structured plan. It also, creating a structured plan prevents overworking, but also underworking. Now, without a plan, we can often fall into two extremes. Now, you can think of which one you fall into here. Either resting or binging too much, that you feel, the unprepared for the lurking term. For us, it's what is it? The Rings of Power just popped up, and we're kind of episode 7, binging through that. So that's Thursday night gone. But if we did that every night, it's underworking. We're kind of maybe squandering. Maybe it's self-care. Who knows? But there's that potential for underworking as well. But you could also start working and stressing and thinking so much that you miss out on the restorative benefits of the break. Overworking. So schedule specific days or blocks or time for work and rest. Actually, perhaps I might run an info sesh on blocking time. It's a really important skill, particularly if we as teachers are not trained to manage this downtime effectively. That's actually quite an interesting one. But also, a structured plan helps minimize the mental load. And here's our friends: stress and anxiety. And constantly thinking about unfinished tasks. So knowing that there are dedicated times for both rest and preparation reduces the background stress and that can creep in during the breaks. And for both me and Lisa, my wife, we're studying our post-grad, and there's always that monkey on our back of, you got to be doing this, got to be doing that. And we're like, no, shut up. We've got to do resting first, and we're going to punch you in the head when this stuff's due. But allocating the first week to pure relaxation or family time and downtime and restoration, and the second week for planning and easing into that workload on your terms ensures that you can enjoy your time off without that nagging feeling of, I should be working. Now, when you plan your time intentionally, you can rest without feeling guilty. If you know that you've allocated sufficient time later in the break, and for us it's the second week, to focus on the planning and the marking, on scheduling, you can truly switch off during that rest block. Now, this is guilt-free rest because and it is vital for mental recovery, and it allows you to return to work more refreshed, more ready to handle the demands of your classroom. And this is exactly what Lisa and I have done for this break. Tip number 2. So that is creating a structured plan. Tip number 2 I suggest would be setting boundaries for work. Now, this is quite idealistic, but just follow the thread, and hopefully we can kick out the other end inspired. But setting boundaries for work. Self-care doesn't mean no work. But in your break, defining specific times, as we've mentioned before, for planning helps avoid the feeling of working throughout the entire break. So allowing guilt-free rest. So guilt-free is a term, as I mentioned, that's popped up quite a bit because it's important. No, guilt is not good. While it's tempting for you to use these breaks to catch up on tasks, especially since teaching often requires long hours beyond the classroom, clear work boundaries allow you to recharge while still preparing for the next term. I'm specifically talking about term breaks here. Now, setting boundaries for work during term breaks is crucial for you to protect your mental health, ensure adequate rest, and prevent burnout. Now, thinking long-term sustainability career, you can't just punch through every single term and win, okay? There needs to be that disconnect. Now, the main point of setting work boundaries, which is apart from well-being and teacher burnout, is a practical thing. Setting boundaries will improve your focus and productivity when you do some of that work preparation marking set up for the next term in the break. It's ironic, but limiting the time you spend on work during the breaks will make you more efficient. So when you set aside specific blocks of time for school-related tasks, maybe in the second week, you'll often find yourself more focused and productive during those hours. Now, without the boundaries, work, and probably experienced this, and it's terrible, but work bleeds into every part of the day, leading to low-level, mind-blocking, unproductive work, where intentional and focused work sessions happen when you do carve out that time specifically. For example, so today, again, I'm home, selfishly recording a podcast while my kids are just on screens. For today, we did so much stuff yesterday. It's just a rester. But my wife is at work. She's carved, I think, between 1 and 4 to just, I think she's got a list of 7 things that she needs to do. And she's just punching those in the head right now as we speak. And that is productive, intentional, and focused, where if she was at home, I know, and we talked about this, she would be fluffing around and doing something with the kids and stressing about the washing or whatever. Bam, what are you doing on the recording? So she is focused and dedicated. That is my point. Set work boundaries. So establish those clear rest boundaries, but also the choice of work blocks if needed. Again, got tips on that, but not for now. So setting work boundaries. And the first one was creating a structured plan. Now, the third tip for balancing this self-care and freedom to work is this idea of freedom from pressure. So viewing the break as a time for flexible working allows you to choose when to focus on the preparation without the pressure. Again, Lisa, my wife, at the school, in her classroom, setting up. There's no students, there's no kids, there's no Ben Hackathon. It's just her and her list and her mind. This mindset encourages you to prioritize well-being while both also getting organized for the upcoming term. Now, the term break or school holidays can bring a unique blend of freedom for teachers. So it's a time where you're not bound by the rigidity of schedules or the bell or the day. However, this freedom is often accompanied by underlying pressure to stay productive. Now, as we've established, whether it's catching up on lesson planning, marking, scheduling, timetabling, behavior management plans, or whatever, anything for the upcoming term, achieving true freedom without the pressure during this term break requires a mindset shift and intentional strategies that allow you to enjoy the break without feeling overwhelmed by these lingering responsibilities. Now, the idea of freedom without pressure involves creating space, as I said multiple times, where you can relax, recharge, and pursue your personal interests, free from the constant demands of your professional role. It's about allowing yourself the time and liberty to step away, guilt-free. Again, it's popped up. And to use this time for both mental and physical rejuvenation. However, many teachers find it quite difficult to fully embrace this freedom due to this internal and external pressures to stay productive, which can lead to feelings of what? Yep, guilt, anxiety, stress about returning to work. Now, I mentioned earlier I was going to name drop and suggest a podcast, which kind of helps in the space of well-being. Now, my good friend Amy Green from The Wellness Strategy, she is an expert in all things teacher wellbeing, and I'd encourage you to seek out her podcast, The Work of Wellbeing. And I think she's actually done an episode on term breaks too, which is fantastic. So check that out. Similar to this, I believe, but important nonetheless. Amy works with schools, works with individuals, works on LinkedIn, socials, podcasting, anything to do with teacher wellness and well-being. Has a couple of books out as well. So find her, Amy Green, Spotify, Apple, where you find your podcasts. Well, I am done. I think I've overcooked this one a little bit. Also undercooked some other bits which I couldn't really deviate into. But timestamping this as the time recording, it's the last week of September term break. And maybe it's too late to kind of implement these for this break, but look into the Christmas break intentionally. Be inspired to restore, rejuvenate yourself and carve out the time, but also be well prepared without the guilt for whatever your 2025 year might look like. So maybe you are moving into leadership or changing a classroom or stepping into the classroom for the first time. Maybe you're a pre-service teacher with a couple of years to go. Look, you can still set up and establish the habits of setting up your term break intentionally and purposefully to set up for success. So, as a sign off, if someone pops into your mind that this really resonates with, tag them, send them this episode, join the Facebook group, get involved, add all your friends to the group. And deep down, I truly hope that you have found a balance between work and rest over this term break. And for goodness sake, stop calling them school holidays if you're a teacher. They are not school holidays unless you literally go away. It is term break. Semantics, shamantics, blamantics. It's a term break. So save the school holidays for the Christmas break. And unless you're going to Fiji or on a cruise and you're just making everyone around you jealous. All right, go do well. I'm out, and be inspired to teach well, lead well, and inspire others in your education journey. Thank you. There we go. Thanks for listening to this episode release of the Teachers Lounge podcast. I really do hope you've enjoyed the dialogue. The information discussed today was just that, information only. It's not specific advice. If you take action on something you've heard today, it's important to make sure that you get professional advice about your unique situation before you proceed, whether that advice be legal, financial, accounting, medical, or otherwise. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or if there is anything I can do to support your teaching or leadership journey, whether it's another topic you'd like discussed or one-to-one support. If you do know someone that would benefit from listening to this episode, please remember to tell them about it, share the episode with them, or connect us on socials. I trust you're encouraged in your role, your leadership aspirations, and your ability to serve and inspire. And that's it. Go do well.